organizations. And with this, I come to today's session, and I come to the session which is called as the rapid transitions of textile businesses in future. And this session will be taken up by Arup Majumdar. He's our expert for today, and he is, as you can see, the CEO of Trariti Consulting Group. And at this time, I'm going to unshare my screen, and I'm going to take this opportunity to introduce you to Arup. Arup has been in the leadership roles in management consulting and consumer product goods for 25 years in strategy, marketing, sales, business development with Ernst & Young, Carrier Malaysia, Emerson Hong Kong, Danfoss France, Embraco China, and Daikin India. This multicultural exposure in matrix organizations enabled him to appreciate culture diversity, norms of doing business globally, and building enduring relationships with multiple stakeholders. His focus is on helping companies achieve profitable growth in the midst of all the disruptive changes that are happening around the world, the pandemic, rapid adoption of technology, and increased and changing customer awareness and preferences. He is a firm believer that innovation, and especially disruptive innovations, will help companies gain and sustain a competitive advantage in the global marketplace. And I'm sure today we are going to see and hear a lot of that. He demonstrated his skills in developing a disruptive and innovative technology and created a highly profitable business of rupees 7,000 crore, close to $1 billion. Wonderful. This success and his learning from Harvard professor Clayton Christensen convinces him that you don't have to be a Steve Jobs to create an innovative company. All of us are capable to create innovation, but you have to learn some competencies at an individual level that will help you generate ideas, collaborate with colleagues to implement them, and build innovation skills throughout your organization to sharpen your competitive edge. His consulting practice is focused on developing these competencies among the CEOs and owners of businesses. He has a BTech from IIT Kanpur and an MBA from IIM Ahmedabad. Welcome, Arup. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on board, and we are extremely delighted that we are going to be listening from you something very, very unique, which I have been privy to, but a lot of other people are definitely looking forward. Welcome, Arup.
Thank you, Gagan. Let me share my screen and then I'll get started.
Absolutely. Go ahead, please.
All right. So my screen is visible?
Yes. Go ahead.
So thank you all for joining this session. I think Gagan has given a very glowing introduction of me. I would be pretty much honored to be able to speak to all of you about what is happening around the world in terms of innovation, digitalization, and relevance to the textile industry. So while I was thinking about how to structure this presentation, I thought that it might be a good idea to break it up into 3 sections. The first section, I talk about what is innovation and what do we mean by innovation. And Gagan talked about Steve Jobs being an innovator. Do we really need to be a Steve Jobs to be an innovator? So we'll talk a little bit about innovation. In the second part, I'm going to talk a little bit about what is going on in the textile industry. All of you are much more of an expert in this industry, but I would like to share some of my thoughts about what's going on. And in the last part of the presentation, I'll talk about what is going on in the digital world. Today, most businesses are competing globally, and digitalization has become a norm. And so how do you as a company, whether you are a large company or you are a small company, how can you take the benefits of digitalization to be able to compete on a global stage? So this is the way that I have structured this presentation. So let us start about a background of innovation. As a consulting firm, we talk to several different industries, several different CEOs. And one of the most common question I ask them that, how do you see this disruption? And over 50% of the company CEOs that I've met, they say that they're at extreme risk of disruption. So they're scared about it. And they see it all around them, especially after COVID, the rate of disruption has increased. So they're aware of it. However, knowing that, they devote 80% of their resources to continuous innovation instead of disruptive. Now, I use 2 words here, continuous or sustaining innovation and disruptive, and I'm going to explain these terms later. But what is interesting to see that they are not putting enough attention to something which is disruptive. And we'll talk a lot more about what disruptive actually means. So this phenomena of investing in something which is safe, something which is secure, that is a phenomena that we see on a daily basis. We know we are at risk. We know that competition from Bangladesh, from Sri Lanka, from other places, Vietnam, they're cropping up and up. We are at risk, but we choose to ignore it. But it is not that people don't understand. People understand that to be able to compete in the market, to have a sustainable advantage, it's important to be innovative. They also understand what needs to be done. They understand about design thinking, lean startup, open innovation culture. So it is not that it's a very unknown concept. People understand that. So managers or owners of companies, they understand the craft well. It is just they can't innovate. But it is not their fault, because there are many forces, both within the company, within the organization, and external, which forces them to not go down the innovative path and take the well-trodden path of being safe, but it risks the possibility of long-term disruption to the company. With this background, let us talk a little bit about sustaining innovation. This is something which all of you do, whether it is material, the kind of materials that you use, the kind of products that you make, the processes that you employ. There is incremental improvement as a part of cost saving, as a part of efficiency improvement. You continue to do that. The business model that you use, that stays relatively unchanged. The need for resource to create sustaining innovation or incremental innovation is not that much. So you really don't worry that much because the stakes are not really high. And your focus is on maintaining a slight competitive edge. As long as you can compete a little bit better than the next door neighbor or somebody in Vietnam or Bangladesh or Sri Lanka, you feel that it's okay to move on. What is the result? The result is that the impact on the market is not dramatic. You are simply moving along with the, or slightly accelerating versus the pace of the market. But is that what will make you really stand out amongst all the competition which is there today and amongst all the competition which is going to happen in the future? And that brings me to the concept of disruptive innovation. Now, this slide is a little bit complex and a little bit crowded, but I'm going to explain it in a simple way. If you look at my text on the left, we are saying that we do cost reduction. We fight with price. If somebody gives certain price in order to get the business, we lower the price. But that is really not a solution, because you reduce the price, competitor reduce the price, it goes down the path where it is mutually destructive. It is harmful to both the companies. So it's not sustainable. But there was a model which was used by Professor Clayton Christensen. That is the model that we use in our consulting firm, TCG, which is called disruptive innovation. This model was successfully used in many companies and in many industries. So whether it be steel, whether it be FMCG, FMCD, or IT, or telecom, or textile, you name any industry, the model can be used. It all needs to be tweaked a little bit here and there, but the model can be applied to any industry. When I was in Hong Kong, we were facing immense competition from the Chinese. And the Chinese had one master stroke, which was price. They fought with us heavily on price. And being an American company, we were not able to compete with them. So what was the choice? Either leave the market to them or fight back. We tried doing incremental innovation, the sustaining innovation, that do some cost reduction here, try to beat down on suppliers on price, and try to get a little bit, squeeze a little bit more profit into the game. But that was really not working. The Chinese have a very unique way of competing. What they do is that they go dramatically lower than your price. So if your price is at a normalized level of 100%, you would expect the competition to come in at probably 95%, and they will take the business from you. But they would go at 80% of your price and simply sweep off your business Because understand the risk. If you quote at a 100% level and a Chinese quotes at an 80% level, if you then drop down and try to play with price, your customer will immediately say that, hey, if you are able to lower from 100 to 80 or less than 80, that means you are making a lot of money. You are squeezing us. So it's a double whammy. So we lose credibility with our customer, that we take a lot of margins. So all our future business is at risk because the customer knows that you guys are making a lot of money. So they will always squeeze us. So the Chinese competitor used to literally beat us. Given that situation, we adopted this disruptive innovation model. I worked with it with my team, and we were able to build a business in China of 7,000 crores. It was at 2 times EBIT. So our regular EBIT was around 12 to 13%. This business was at 25, 26%. So we were able to fend off the Chinese competition, and we were able to secure a lot of lost ground what we did in China. Now, what did this model involve? It involves not just sitting inside a room and then trying to figure out some innovative ideas. And I'll talk to you about how to generate ideas. But in the process of disruptive innovation, you have to involve all the stakeholders who are there in the supply chain, whether it is your supplier, whether it's your distribution channel, whether it's your customer. You have to involve a lot of people in the game to be able to use this model. Was this model used in India? Yes, it has been used by some companies in India to get out products in the market which were absolutely disruptive, and it changed the scene of the market. So it's a very, very valuable model that we use. So now coming to the graph on the right, you can see that the x-axis basically talks about time. And the y-axis is about the product performance. When I say product, it could be product, it could be service. It's a generic term, product. There are 3 blue lines that you can see going from left to the right. The top of the line is performance that customers will pay for. It means the attributes, the values that your product has, customers will pay for that. And these are the highly profitable segment of the market. Then the middle blue line is the mainstream market. These are people who will kind of pay you the money, but they will not pay you a premium. This is the mainstream. This is where the bulk of the market is. And then you have the lower blue line, that is the low end of the market. So in any market, if you see, there is a pyramid structure. You have the high tier, which is volume is low, but margins are high. You have the medium tier, where the volumes are slightly higher, margins are a little bit lower. And then you have the mass market, where the volumes is a volume game. It's all volume, but very, very competitive on price. So this is what customers are willing to pay for. And as time progresses, as you move on in the x-axis, as time progresses, what happens is that the performance of the product or the service that you provide, that keeps on increasing because you do incremental improvements. So with incremental improvement, the curve actually takes a trajectory on the right. That is the normal business scenario. Now, what happens when you go on a disruptive model? In a disruptive model, the red line shows how it works. What the disruptive model does is that you look at a value proposition which appeals to the lower end of the market. So the bottom line that you see, the entrant disruptive trajectory, that is your trajectory. That means you attack the low end of the market. It takes you some time. So you move on the x-axis. It takes you some time to develop this technology or the innovation, but you attack the low end of the market with no frill product. And then you start slowly moving upwards. So you try to gain volumes in the very beginning, but as time progresses, as you mature, as your product becomes more and more sophisticated, you start entering into the mainstream and you start getting profitability. So conceptually, this is how the model works. That along with your stakeholders, you identify the least of the attributes which are needed to make your product work. And then slowly over a period of time, you move up the trajectory and improve performance and start getting highly profitable business. Now, if this is what is very common sense, then why is it that firms don't innovate? There must be a reason for it. because this doesn't look rocket science. The left hand, or what I told you about sustaining, most of us know that. This one may be a new concept to some of you, but it's not rocket science. So why don't companies innovate? These are some of the reasons which people have told me, CEOs have told me, that why they don't innovate. The first thing which is very common is that, hey, you know what? We know our customers well. We will know if they want something new. So we know our customers well, don't worry. They worry about the present, about this quarter, especially in large companies when the business is run quarter by quarter or half yearly. Then they say that, look, future is future, but we have to survive this quarter. So we have to think about this quarter. The third reason, there is no sense of urgency. We have so many things to do. Why should we put resources on innovation? Fourth reason, which basically comes from many industrial companies actually, is that we are very process oriented. We are conventional. Since we are conventional, our customers will not accept crazy innovation. So we really don't want to waste our resources. Fifth reason, they say, hey, you know what? We are very low on profit. Our margins are very low. So we don't have resources. We don't have people. We don't have time. We don't want to put into machinery or equipment or into research or collaboration with universities. We don't want to do that because we really are short of resources. So resources is an example. The sixth one, which is very interesting, they say that, look, I'm not an innovative guy. I'm short of innovative resources. So when you use the magic word of innovation, I'm not that innovative. I really don't have much ideas. If I don't have ideas, why talk about innovation? That is what I've heard CEOs talking to me, and it's across the globe. It's not only in India. When I was in Europe, I heard about that. When I was in Asia Pacific, I heard about that. Latin America, the same story. That's the reason that firms don't innovate. So there is a myth. And the myth is that, do you have to have the caliber of Steve Jobs to make your company innovative? Is it something which is in the DNA of a person, that he was born with the qualities of innovation? And the answer is no, because we have gone through several researches and there are documented evidences that if you look at all the innovative companies in the world, whether it be Apple or whether it be Google, whether it be Amazon, eBay, Flipkart, you name any innovative company, it is not that the owner or the founder were extremely innovative. There were certain skill sets that they picked up during the course of their growing up, which made them be more innovative than other people. If that is the case, then what are those qualities that you can do, everybody in this audience can do to become innovative? And there are some simple ways that you can become innovative. So let's talk about you as a person. I'm not talking about your team. I'm not talking about the company. I'm just talking about you. What is it? So innovation, or what we call as the innovator's DNA, it all starts with you. If you look at the left, you have to have the courage. The most important thing, you have to have the courage of challenging the status quo. Because if you don't have the courage, it will be very difficult for you to get into the mindset of innovation. Because innovation, as you can understand, has a risk of failures. So if you are afraid of failures, it will be very difficult to get that DNA into you. The first thing is that you must have the courage to challenge the status quo. And in doing that, you have to take risks. Now, there are certain skills which you can pick up. And research shows that 80% or close to 80% of the so-called innovators, they had these 5 skills. So what are these 5 skills? Let's talk a little bit about it. The first one is questioning skills, that you got to ask questions. Why? Take a simple example. When Steve Jobs, I'm taking the example of Steve Jobs, but there are many other examples, but let me take one which is very easily relatable. When Steve Jobs was working on the computer, on the PC, the noise of the fan, in the PC we have this big box and there's a fan behind it. and the fan was making a lot of noise. So he started wondering that this is a distraction. So why is it that we need to have a fan? Why can't we get rid of it? When he talked to his engineer said that, no, you know what? There is power electronics over there. It generates heat. So we need a fan to take away the heat. But he said, no, there must be a way to figure it out. So he went outside his industry. He went outside the computer industry. And that is important, that not all innovative ideas will be generated by talking to people in your industry, your company. Ideas will and absolutely will come from outside. So he went to another industry where power electronics was being used, and he was able to work with a company who could make very efficient power modules by which the fan was eliminated. So he went to a different place, and he went because he asked a question. It looks stupid that the computer is generating heat and we need a fan. It's obvious, but he questioned it. So you got to have that ability to start questioning and not take everything as status quo. The second is observing. When we go to different factories, when we go to offices, when we look at processes, we look at the supply chain, we actually look. But there's a difference between looking and observing. Looking means you perfunctorily look at everything which is going on, you have a general idea. But when you observe, you minutely observe, you will notice something that you can pick up, which you can bring to your business. So that is another behavioral skill which is important, which is to observe. So when you go to another factory, you go to a trade show, you go anywhere, you observe. The third is networking. Now, all of you are networked in some way or the other. This association is a place where you are networking, but you are networking with like-minded people, people who think like you, people who think about the garment industry, apparel industry. So their thought process is in a certain way, which is quite similar to yours. But if you network with people who are outside your industry, nothing to do with your industry, you will sometimes, and in many cases, most of these innovators have done is that they have networked with other people, they have picked up ideas from other businesses and they've brought it into their business. So network doesn't essentially mean that you have to network within your own group of people, your own comfort zone, be able to talk the same language, but you should be able to network outside what you do. And the fourth, of course, which is a part of taking risk, is experimenting, that you have to experiment. Now, when you do all this, you have questioned, you observed, you've networked with people, you've experimented, then how do you bring this all together? And that is a cognitive skill. The cognitive skill basically says that you have different data points in your brain. And you must, over a period of time, develop this ability to be able to connect the dots together and bring something relevant for your business. So there are umpteen examples where people, whether it is Amazon or Flipkart or any other, if you talk to the owners, they will tell you that they have borrowed the ideas from some other place and they were able to network it and they were able to interconnect it with their business. So this is something which can be acquired. This is not God-given. You are not born with this. This you can actually do. And in the workshops that we do for innovative thinking, these are some of the skill sets that we encourage and we inculcate in other participants who are in our workshop to be able to actually get into it and deliver some ideas which are innovative in nature. Now we talked about you. Now let's talk about your organization. How do you encourage the idea or inculcate the idea of innovation in your organization? So the lesson for innovative companies, first is our strategy lesson. We sometimes fall into the trap of thinking that innovation has to be big. But remember, innovation need not be a blockbuster. Small innovations add up. And innovation is not only about product. Innovation is about the way you market the product, the way you produce it, the way you finance it. There are different financing models which are being used now for businesses. The way you distribute your product. Look at the way e-commerce has evolved. So innovation can come from many, many different areas in the business, not only from a sheer apparel or a sheer cloth. It can come from many, many different sources. Now, when you invest, you have to look at resources. So the recommendation or the strategic recommendation is that you put your big bets on some innovation which you think has a high probability of success. And we're going to talk about it a little bit later, how to do that. And then the pyramid flows down, that you put some small bets on some small ideas, which means that at any point in time, you have a basket of ideas that you're working on, somewhere you are putting more resources and somewhere you are putting less resources. And at the end of the day, some may work, some may not work, but at the end of the day, you will have a better ROI on the investment that you have put. The second is process lessons. In large companies, what happens is that there is a process that you have to plan. I'm going to do this. You put some budget into it. Then you do review meetings. That is it going according to plan? Am I hitting the time? Am I hitting the cost? Am I hitting the quality? So there are different milestones. And if you try to reinforce or if you force the traditional model into an innovative idea model, then it kills the spirit of innovation, because then you put boundaries. So when you have an innovative idea, then expect deviations from plan. It may happen, because when you innovate, you are trying to enter into a market which is probably not known. So if you guess, your guess is as good as my guess. So if you try to put numbers to justify an investment, the numbers may be too small, but then nobody knows. It might become a very big idea. So you have to allow deviations in your planning process. Structure level. You have certain capabilities. The third bullet point. You have certain capabilities. Innovation doesn't mean that you have to chuck all those out and bring in something dramatically new. You can leverage your existing resources to do something innovative. Of course, certain additional capital, certain additional resources in terms of manpower capability might be required, but you basically recycle a majority of your existing resources. Skills. You have to have good communication skills. If you go to a trade show and you see something very nice, you got to come and convince the organization that, look, this is something that we should do. You should be able to communicate, because if you don't communicate, things will not happen in the organization. Many SME organizations that I have worked with in the past, what happens is that the top guy, the boss or the owner, says that, okay, you have to do this. And everybody follows and they do that, because the boss is always right. The boss, what has said, we have to do it. But you have to communicate, what is this innovation? What is the value of this innovation? How is it going to help? And you will see automatically ideas flowing into the organization. And innovation requires collaboration. A marketing guy, a guy who goes into a trade show, he has to talk to people who are in R&D, who are in manufacturing, who is in sales, who's in supply chain, to be able to synchronize the effort and get an innovative idea actually crystallized, because it is not a silo mentality which will really create a finally innovative product at the very end. So you have to have the whole organization stuck together with a glue. Common though it may seem that, yeah, we are all a team, but actually the companies that I have talked to and the companies with many, many researchers I've talked to, they find that the organizational behavior or the people behavior has been one of the major reasons why innovative ideas have not flowed in the organization. So that is something that you have to take care of and ensure that the whole team is energized to stand behind an innovative idea. Now there are some simple lessons of how companies we can encourage innovation. These are very simple. So what is it? You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Keep your innovation simple. Start with building it. You can't go from a level which is low to a level which is very high in one day. So you have to take baby step at a time. It could be having a new marketing strategy, going into digitalization, which I'm going to talk about, or finding a supplier who is able to collaborate with you to probably provide you different types of material or improvement in the supply chain. It could be anything. But don't reinvent the wheel. Keep things moving and get into the groove of innovation. Make it a routine. Schedule an hour, impromptu, and you call your people and get into a brainstorming ideas that, okay, what are the things we can do different? Challenge the status quo. That is the important word. Challenge the status quo. Why? Why are we doing like this? Why can't we do it the other way around? Some of them will work, some of them will not work. Solicit suggestions. Many companies you go to, there is a suggestion box where people will put the suggestions. But I have, at least my personal experience is that most of the suggestions, they are not given enough attention. Because people think that, okay, we have to do it as a suggestion box, so we put a suggestion box. But when the ideas come, the actual follow through or the implementation of the ideas actually happens very, very few times. And that is a reality. Get your team on board. As I said, the teamwork to build a culture of innovation is very important. So get your team on board. Invest in innovation. You have to invest, whether it's your time or it is technology, which you have to either license or you have to purchase. You have to invest in innovation, maybe small. I'm not saying that you have to pump in crores of rupees for creating innovative technologies. It's not that. You can do it in a small way, but you have to get into the groove. You have to get into the mentality of doing things. Educate yourself. All of you are attending this SowtexConnect meeting, and you continue to attend so many SowtexConnect meetings where there are so many topics being talked about. Learn new skills and read what is happening in the global market. What are the challenges you are facing? What are the opportunities which are coming? And you will learn a lot. And remember what I said, networking, that you have to network with people to get more ideas into your organization. Harness unappreciated, underappreciated trends. Many times some trends happen and people think that, oh, this is a fringe idea, it may not work. But then sometimes those ideas can become mainstream. So constantly be on the lookout for new ideas. Even if they are small today, they can become big business later. So you have to look for those little trends that you see, and trade shows where there are hundreds of exhibitors. Those are good places to actually go to small areas or small exhibitions, which demonstrate ideas. They're small, but they could have far-reaching consequences. The last is, all of us are busy, and you are super busy because as an owner, you have the responsibility of managing everything. But what typically happens, and I've seen it happening in companies of the size of 250 crore, 400 crore, 500 crores in India, that we tend to micromanage. We want to have our finger into everything. We want to make sure the product is, the supplier is coming on time, the supplier, the payables, the receivables, quality, the customer acquisition, you name any function in the organization, your fingers are into it. That is a reality. But if you try to micromanage your business, where is the time for you to take a step back and think a little bit as to how the business is going to look like in the next 3 to 5 years? So you have to let go. You have to let go some of the decisions to your next level, and you have to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Look at the bigger picture and then create a strategy what your subordinates can implement. But devote some time every day trying to do that. So this brings to an end the first part of my presentation about talking about innovation. Now let's talk a little bit about textile. I'll go through it quite quickly because most of you are pretty much aware of it. Now we know there are some challenges with the textile industry. We know the market size is big. We expect double-digit growth. We know that it's resource intensive. Very simple example, t-shirt takes lots of water to get made. We use fossil fuels, coal to a very large extent. That is releasing greenhouse gases. We are already under severe threat. Several international organizations are saying that the global warming is exceeding the rate which should be growing in order to keep the global warming within 1.5 degrees C. We are not going to do that if we continue at this rate. And textile industry uses a lot of fuel. The processes are still not advanced and there are inefficiencies in the process. So there is an area for improvement. We know that developing countries, we had the incident in Bangladesh, we know the labor conditions are difficult. We also know that today's customer their demographics, their buying power, their choice of apparels is changing very fast. So consumer demand is changing very fast. It leads to a lot of stress in the supply chain. Because if you produce something by which time it reaches the consumer, the fashion is out, then you basically have unsold stock. So to be able to have a flexible supply chain is important in textile, very important in textile. It's important in other industries also. And we see it in many other industries, even in industrial companies, we see that they want flexibility in the supply chain. You see what has happened with the China situation, that we have a severe shortage of semiconductors. So to have an agile and flexible supply chain is also a challenge for the textile industry. And we know there's extensive waste with either unfashionable or non-worn garments. We buy more than we use non-worn garments. So given this challenges that we have, what could be possible disruptions in the textile industry? So these are some of the things which I thought of as possible disruptions in the textile industry. The first is material. Look at material which have a negative impact on biodiversity. COVID has taught us that there is a strong connection between living species, whether it's human or it's bat or it's any other animal. There has to be a respect for biodiversity. So man-made cellulose fibers, synthetics, we have to try to reduce it and find sustainable substitutes. And we know in the market today, there are substitutes for material. It is just that it's in the fringe. And that is what I talked about. And today, what is in the fringe, when the things hit a roadblock, those things which are on the fringe will become mainstream. So you have to look out for those innovations in material. Processes. You have to invest in making your processes more efficient, more environmental friendly. Forecasting. Today, we have access to artificial intelligence, machine language. We have got so many tools available with us to ensure that we can do better forecasting. Sometimes we forecast basically on guts. When an order comes, we produce it, or we produce it on guts because the supply chain is not flexible, forecasting is not accurate. So inventory gets collected at different points in the supply chain. So having a flexible forecasting system, and there are tools to do it. It is not that you have to create some magic to do it. There are tools to be able to forecast a little bit more accurately. Now you have produced. Then the question comes of marketing a product. So educating a product. And I was thinking that if I go to a mall and I like some shirt and I buy it, do I ever look at whether it is made in India, made in Vietnam, made in Bangladesh? Rarely I look at that. But if I were to be educated that, look, this particular brand or this particular make is coming from a company which is environmentally more responsible, more conscious, would probably give some weightage to that instead of totally ignoring them. So marketing, and today you have tools of marketing, and digital is a fantastic tool that you have for marketing. And I'm going to talk about it in the third part of my presentation of how to harness the power of digital marketing. The last one is try to look at a different business model. Gagan talked about managing capacity. So you have capacity, somebody doesn't have capacity. If you get more demand, is there a way to form collaboration between similar-minded products to be able to have something like a cooperative society, to be able to harness the capacity utilization of your plants, of your manufacturing processes to get better economies of scale? So these are possible disruptions. There could be many more, and there will be many more once you sit down and you go through the process which I talked about in generating innovative ideas. The next slide, we talk about a little bit about the circular economy, and today a lot of discussion is going about circular economy. Now the left-hand circle is very complex. You may not be able to read it, but if you look at the right-hand side where the text is there are certain principles of the circular economy. There are two perspectives, one from the producer and one from the consumer. Producers like you have to design with a purpose, longevity, resource efficiency, biodegradability, and all the elements which are listed there. I'm not going to read them out. You can possibly read it, or later we will give you a printout. You can read it. So from a producer perspective, there are certain things that we can do to get into the cycle of a circular economy. From a consumer perspective, it's more of use, wash, and repair. And it's a mindset change. And that is where marketing comes in. That if you educate people more and more, and if you have seen the initiative taken by H&M in Europe, and when I lived in France, I saw that. The initiatives they have taken to educate the customer about the benefits of recyclable material, it works, but it needs commitment. It needs commitment both at an industry level and it needs commitment at a company level. So what is it? So if you look at the industry level, first of all, as an industry, you have to take bold leadership. You say that the textile industry can make an impact to manage biodiversity and create less impact on the environment. That is a very positive statement that you can make. And you have to show as industry leaders that, yes, we are committed to doing something good for the planet, which means investing in low impact technologies. You can't do it if you are a single company, but as an organization, as an association, if you do it, then it has more power. And you don't do it alone. In Europe, I have seen, when I was in France, that they collaborate with universities, with university professors, and they have research programs where they search alternate materials, alternate processes. So for example, when you talk about effluent discharge, we know that you have to use the process of adsorption to manage the effluent, but that is expensive. But there the research goes in that can you use some alternate material, carbon-based material, which can create or which can reduce the effect of effluent. So as an industry, you got to engage with the policymakers, the people who make policies, to help you create this culture of having a better environmental footprint. Relentlessly pursue zero waste in whatever processes that you do, especially, for example, in dyeing and finishing. Does dyeing and finishing need to be two different processes? Can they be combined together? Ask this question. That is what? Why? Question them. Yes, traditionally we have done that like that we have pre-treatment, we have dyeing, we have finishing, and there are many different processes. But do they have to be like that? Question that. There are societies in the US, FSC, the Forest Stewardship Council, PEFC, which actually advocates, and they bring out and they actually say that this product is from so and so approved agencies, and consider cooperation between different players in order to get the best cost position, because you are competing against Bangladesh, against Vietnam, against Sri Lanka, amongst many other countries. So you have to have a best cost position. Best cost position can come when you are able to produce at the optimal or the peak efficiency. So you shouldn't let your machine work at 80% utilization or 70% utilization. Share capacity. Figure out a way to collaborate so that you can beat the external competition. So these are some of the suggestions which you can do at the industry level. Now, at a company level, that companies should understand, and I'm sure that you understand, that consumers are becoming more aware of all this impact which is happening. Now it is the disease, but the second one, it will be air. The air is getting polluted. It's already there. We're already talking about IAQ, indoor air pollution and stuff like that. So things are becoming that the consumers are becoming more and more aware. So the moment the consumers become aware, remember, they are the ones giving us the business. So you have to be in tune with what the consumers want. Lead the way in educating the consumer. Let them know. You may not immediately get the price, but if you create that, it creates the path for you to be successful in the future. So you have to take some pain in the beginning in terms of resources, in terms of money, but it will create some sustainable advantage for you. So number 4 is that you will get a better price on your product. When I talk to my colleagues in Europe, they say that if there is an incremental price to be paid for getting a product which has got a low environmental footprint, they are willing to shell out the euro. They will do it, but not huge. But they will pay a premium. So the important point here is that as you make consumers more and more aware, they will start using it. Take a very simple example. In this room, in my room, I have an air conditioner. Before the star labeling was introduced, it was all on price. Cheapest, buy it. The small scale manufacturers, they were having a gala time. The big guys, they were losing out because they were losing on price. But then the Bureau of Energy Efficiency came in and they put the star label. I can see it on my AC. What did it do? It made a level playing field. Now, consumers are willing to pay because now they know that if they buy something which is a 3-star or a 4-star or a 5-star, it is more efficient, it consumes less energy. So they're willing to pay a higher price. It's all about consumer awareness. So you will get a better price if you have a better product, if you have a better value proposition. But to be able to do that, you have to invest in these kind of initiatives of making sure that you are investing and working on processes which reduces the environmental footprint. Now let's talk a little bit about digitalization or disruption through digital. When I talk to people, or when you talk to people, everybody today is a social media expert. Everybody knows how to use Facebook, Insta. So it is common. There are agencies which have mushroomed throughout our country who says, we are social media, we are digital experts. That's what they say, we are digital experts. But social media strategy, so there are 3 parts of digitalization. First of all, digital strategy is not equal to social media strategy. It is much, much more than that. If you look at the bottom, social media strategy is Facebook, Twitter, Insta, YouTube. These are your social media. So that is clean. You take a step above and you go to the marketplace that you use social media, but then you have an enabler, which is your Amazon, which is a Flipkart, which is an enabler to do business. So that you go 1 level up and it becomes a marketing strategy. You use LinkedIn to showcase your product to the professional community. That's a digital marketing strategy. But then 1 level up, which is slightly more complex, is when you go to a full-scale digital strategy, which means that you're using the power of CRM. You're using the power of IoT. You're looking at artificial intelligence. You're looking at machine learning. You're looking at all these things. You're looking at cloud. You're looking at analytics. Data, you've heard that. Data is the new oil. So the more data you get, and the more you're able to analyze the data, the better is your supply chain, better is your business. And it's not only for textile, it is for applicable for all industries, the importance of data analytics. It was not heard of, or it was not in prominence years before, but now with the advent of so much of technology, data analytics has become very, very powerful tool. Financial ERP. How do you price your product? How do you cost your product? How do you get transparency in the cost structure of your organization? Financial ERP, which is linked to CRM, will give you that. So once you do all that, that becomes a comprehensive digital strategy. So somebody says that I'm a digital marketeer, he's actually talking about the bottom one. A digital marketeer, most of the time, is assumed to be somebody who knows Facebook, who knows Insta, who knows YouTube, But it is much more than that. It requires a lot more effort, a lot more brains to actually implement a digital strategy. But again, it is not magic. The building blocks are there. You have to have the mindset to be able to integrate that into your business. So given today's scenario, we believe, and most of you will also agree with me, that digitalization is not an option anymore. Either you adopt a digital strategy or you face extinction. We have seen this. Small businesses, and I was talking to somebody in Coimbatore yesterday from the textile. They're saying that they are feeling the pressure of digitalization and they're losing out because some small players are coming up who are being digitally more active and they're gaining more international business than what these fellows were doing, the regular guys who were in business before. So people are realizing it. So before it gets too late, you have to jump onto the path of digitalization. Now there are several, like I talked about, there are 3 levels. There's a social media strategy, which is the simplest to do, a digital marketing strategy, and a digital strategy. So the y-axis tells you the level of difficulty. Social media strategy is the simplest to do. But if you look at the x-axis, which gives you a scale of competitive advantage, the competitive advantage is low because everybody is present on social media today. So level of difficulty is low, competitive advantage is low. But when you go to the digital marketing strategy, your competitive advantage becomes slightly better. And the level of difficulty to do it is, from a resource point of view, is slightly a bit more. But when you go to a full-fledged digital strategy, which I talked about before, of integrating all the technologies, of trying to take bits and pieces of all the technologies that are available and put it in your business. If you're a small business or whether you are a large business, you can take bits and pieces and scale it down to your business. Now the cloud allows you to scale businesses. So whether you are small, it doesn't matter. You pay as you use. Those models are coming in place. So once you get into that, a fully formed digital strategy, that gives you a real competitive advantage. And that is what you should be aiming for over a period of time. Now, when you talk about digital marketing, let's talk about the social media strategy. Now, how do you measure that? What is the effectiveness of my social media strategy? As a firm, small or large, you have a presence on Insta, on Facebook, on Twitter. You have all these platforms. How do you actually measure? Are you doing good? Are you not doing good? How are you measuring it? Now, this slide, it's a very busy slide. It basically says that if you want to understand the effectiveness of your social media strategies or subset of digital marketing strategies, then there are metrics, there are KPIs that you can actually measure. So for email marketing, there are 5 metrics. For mobile, there is 6. For SEO, search engine, there are 31. Like that for different channels which are there, starting from 1 to 8, from email marketing all the way down to affiliate marketing. You have number of metrics you can use to measure how effective is your social media presence. To give an example, if you look at YouTube, which is item number 6 at the bottom, the fourth last from the bottom, you can see in YouTube on the right hand side, there are 52 metrics. So there are 52 metrics that you can measure to say whether your YouTube engagement is good or not good. So if you dive deep into it, people who say that they're social media expert or digital expert, you've got to ask them this question that, hey, tell me the metrics by which you measure. They might tell you 5, 10, but if you go really deep into it, there are 52 metrics for YouTube. Now the question is, what is my ROI? I spent 100 rupees. What did I get? What is my ROI? How will I measure it? So this is a tool that we have developed in our consulting firm to measure the ROI. So if you see, you can't read because it's too small, but if you look at the oval that I've drawn over here, basically talks about the important things. The first thing on the top left you see is the ROI. It's written ROI original, 13.3%. It means that the data that I've plugged in over here, it actually gives me an ROI of 13.3%. Now, how is ROI measured? It is the input that you're given in terms of money. So the big oval on the left, it shows that how much money I have put in Facebook, on Insta, on LinkedIn, Twitter, all those platforms. What is the amount of money that I have put? So in the bottom left-hand side, you can see the total Indian rupee spent on digital marketing. In this case, is $10,000. So you know how much you are going to spend. You've allocated certain money to Facebook, certain money to Insta. So this is your budget. Now comes the question of what is my impact. So the right-hand side block actually tells you what is your impact. So this tool that we have developed actually tells you that what is your return on investment by platform. So on Insta, what is the ROI? What is the ROI on Twitter, LinkedIn, etc.? It gives you the incremental sales by putting the money the way you have allocated in this platform. Incremental gross margins, the margins that you make. Now, once you can plug in these values, you get a certain ROI and you call that original ROI. Then some smart fellow says, hey, why should we allocate money like that? Why can't we allocate money in a different way? So you start playing with the numbers. You put more in Facebook, less in LinkedIn, or maybe put more in Insta or more in YouTube, and you can see the ROI changing. And then you can decide what is the best way to spend your total money in different social media channels to get the best ROI. And today, social media has become so powerful that you cannot ignore it. You have to use it, but you must understand how to use it wisely, so that every rupee that you spend gives you the return. It is not that I'm just active over there, but no, measure it and measure it in terms of real money, because you are paying real money for this, so you should get real money in return. So this tool allows you to explore and understand what is the real ROI. Gagan asked me this question that sometimes small firms think that all these things that I talked about, they are meant for large firms. They have resources, they have money, but actually no. If you look at this model, what I'm saying is that whether you are a small firm with a small turnover or you're a large firm with large turnover, innovation will improve your competitiveness. The way this graph is done is that the x-axis is your turnover. So the small company on the left and the large companies with large turnover is towards on the right, that is the x-axis. The y-axis is the level of maturity and ability to compete. So if your scale is big, maturity is big, and your ability to compete is high, then you go up. The traditional market structure is what you see by the solid line, that this is how the traditional market structure is, that the bigger and bigger the company becomes, the ability to compete becomes more and more. So the graph goes like this. The bigger the size you become, the better you are able to compete. That is common sense. But then if you choose to be disruptive, you become on the path of the dotted line. You increase your level of competitiveness. And then as you become bigger and bigger, you come closer and closer to the big players, because you scale up, you grow your business, your revenue increases. Now, what are the disruptions? What do you have to do to get onto the dotted line? So the possible disruptions, what we talked about before, was in the material that you use, in the processes that you use, the way you market, the way you are perceived as an industry steward, how much digitalization have you done, and the consumer awareness that you have been able to create. So starting from a large gap, small company, not very competitive, if you start adopting some of these practices, you will get closer and closer to the large companies. And that is something that you really want. That is what you want. You want to compete with the big fellows in their turf. And this is the roadmap for you to be able to get to that. Now we talk about resources. You have to invest in some resources to be able to do that. You have to invest in innovation. You have to invest in digital marketing. You have to invest in some people. So there is some money involved. So how will you invest your resources? So there are certain guidelines that we give, that how are you going to use that little money that you have in terms of putting it into different buckets of innovation. So these are some of the recommendations that we give, is that any plan that you make, because we know resources are limited, money, people, they're limited, bake profitability into a plan. And we work on the reverse income statement. Typically, business plans are made on income statement, that is P&L, that I put so much money, so much sales, so much cost, so much profit. It's a standard format, but we work on the reverse income statement, that if I want to get this profitability, what is the sales I must have, and what are the enablers which will help me to achieve the sales? calculate allowable cost, which means how much cost you can actually allow to make your new ideas to actually work. And that is important because you want to have profitability in your new product. Now you make certain assumptions that if I do this, there will be revenues of X and X size. So you make certain assumptions. So we have to identify the assumptions in great details. And there is a way to do it. It's not rocket science, there's a way to do it. And once you have done your reverse income statement, you have looked at your allowable cost, you have looked at your assumptions, then you determine whether it makes sense to do this project, taking away those constraints I talked about, that don't put the constraint that there has to be a milestone, there has to be a gate, like they do in established products, established companies. No, relax some of those boundaries and then look at your framework to see whether it makes sense or not. And then you test your assumptions at each milestone that, yes, have I been able to achieve what I wanted to achieve? If not, then do a course correction. These are very structured way of thinking. And Christensen's model of disruptive innovation covers all these things. And that is what we as a consulting firm, we help companies to go through this process so that they are successfully able to launch innovative products. Now I come to the end of my presentation. So I'll do an executive summary. This is the last slide. So there are 8 points over here, which summarizes what I talked so far. That innovation, whether it's sustaining or it's disruptive, creates long-term competitive advantage. The theories and the concept can be applied across a broad range of industries, including textile. We know that textile has a negative environmental impact, so there's an opportunity for innovation. We know that innovation can come from material, from processes, from marketing, from business model. There are different ways. Leadership has to be shown. Consumers are becoming more aware. Digital strategy is not equal to social media strategy. Big data, AI, ML, cloud, these are all tools which are there to help you get the best in the market. And you don't have to be a large company to do all that what I said in the last 1 hour. Companies of any size can embrace innovation and can lead to a more competitive and a sustainable business for you in the future. So that is all I have in the formal presentation. So thank you. And any questions, I'll be happy to take that.
Super.
Super. Thank you so much, Arupji, for such a brilliant insight about the entire landscape that you have covered in a very short span of time. Gagan, I'm just taking a little moments to take up some questions directly to start with. And Arupji, I wanted to just clarify 2 things. In terms of the textile landscape, the market size is not $54 billion, it is about $232 billion. So it's fairly about 5 times of what your numbers are.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'm talking about because it's a big, big business model, and what numbers we have seen is relatively are towards the export side. But when we actually see the collective landscape of what it is, right from the finished goods to the raw material supply chain and everything, it all comes down together to about $232 billion. So a lot of information on that. And thank you so much for sharing us about the disruptive innovation. Now, I have a few questions which I want to start off, and then we can have questions from the people from the room also. My first question, you know, we being a tech company, and we are aware of most of these challenges, and that's how we started working out on this model where we can make industry much more closer, more closer through digitization. And the idea is to make them adopt to the newer ways of sustainability in the business models, whether it is manufacturing or it is supply chain, how they can eliminate the waste and the processes and how they can cut down on it. So one typical area which majority of us, including we as a technology company now faces, is the fact that it is relatively, well, technology is the game changer and everybody understands it. The adoption is very slow, and yet companies and the business owners, they take a lot of time to graduate to these technologies. even though it is a low cost technology. How do you suggest we can fast track or fasten this complete process in the ecosystem?
Mhm. One of the reasons that I've seen people are hesitant to put innovation out very quickly is that they're afraid that there is intellectual property violation. And sometimes patents are filed to protect it. Now, patents are of two types. One is a product patent, which relates to the physical product, and one is related to the process patent. So if you are able to protect your intellectual right in some way, and you apply it to certain countries where you are exporting the product, for example, if you're exporting to the US, then you apply for patent protection in the US, you'll be able to protect your intellectual right to a certain extent, and it will help you to be competitive a little bit longer, because at the end of the day, people will try to do reverse engineering, and patents have their own life. So that is one obstacle that some people have told me, that they're scared that they invest precious resources and then somebody copies it.
So while the point here is people are aware of the fact that there are low cost digital adoption areas, where they can graduate faster, where they don't have to invest too much, and they can use it on SaaS-based model. But yet people are still skeptical of how to adopt to this. And we find it a little challenging when, when we have to educate them as to how the processes are churning fast. Any particular suggestion where you feel these are some of the key areas that one has to look into while looking into the adoption model?
Before that, can I request Arup to please unshare the screen so that we can all be on the main screen? Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Yes, that's much better. Perfect. Yes. Go ahead, please. Sorry.
So what we have seen is that the lethargy to change is one of the biggest obstacles. And whenever you try to bring in technology, people will say that the old ways of doing things was better, and then there is some hesitancy or reluctance to adopt technology, and that happens in most software or most technology adoption. If you see the history of CRM, I mean, so many CRM solutions have failed in companies because it is not that the CRM doesn't work. It is the people. It is the people who are not willing to embrace it. So the key over here is that don't go for a massive leap of digitalization in one step. Take it one step at a time, number one. Number two, you have to have one or two champions identified within the company who will push the agenda of digitization throughout the organization. That's point number two. And point number three, the man at the top, either the owner, the MD, or the CEO, he has to take personal accountability for the success of the CRM. I've had clients where CRM was implemented, but the boss himself, he was not using it. He was using the traditional means of Excel and working through emails. So the people down below him, they were saying that if the top guy doesn't do it, I mean, why should we take the extra effort of learning something? So the inertia, that is one of the biggest obstacles that we see in adoption of digitalization.
Thank you for sharing that thought process. And I'm sure this is like one important point is finding the champions in the organization who are key to fast track the entire process. And I do really understand the fact that the business owners, if they don't take up the accountability of the process, then it is, of course, a process which can be delayed, or it can be, discounted at a certain point of time, where the people believe that it is not something which is coming from the top. That's very unique to the Indian, especially the Indian traditional businesses. Another important point what I want to put up here is while most of the businesses are being framed out traditionally from the family roots, either they are family businesses or there are certain businesses which are being brought up by the new age entrepreneurs and people who have been in the industry and now have taken the plunge of being an entrepreneur, and that's how they build up and scaled up the model. Now, while this journey is something wherein traditionally for the textiles, it is a little long journey, and there is no proper area of upskilling the people again and again on knowing how the new latest things are coming in. Like the way you just showed how a social media strategy has to be taken up. I'm sure most of the people in the textiles and in the fashion area, then they have very limited information or expertise into that particular domain. Now, how can a people adopt to it? That is one. And secondly, how can the academic or the industry join hands together to make sure this becomes an important area where people can learn and grow faster?
So there are two elements of this question. The first part of the question is that how do we ensure that we continuously upskill the people that is there in the industry to get the best practices? And there are some simple rules that, when you attend trade shows or you look at different companies, you look at what other people are doing, not only in your industry. As I said, look outside what they're doing. For example, people who are very well advanced in e-commerce, what is their business model? So you have to be continuously on the path of up learning. You have to upskill yourself. Now, the fact is this industry is fragmented. There are many players. So what happens that typically companies are afraid to invest in people because they think they will be poached and they will go to a different company, and that's the reality of life, right? But then the question is that if you create the culture of what I call as from a family-run business to a corporate style of business, then the movement of people becomes less and less. And I have seen it in so many cases that the owner, even for making a 500 crore company, the owner for making a hotel bill, or to sign a hotel bill, it takes his signature because they are deep into it. Versus a corporate culture, I'm not saying that you become like a large corporate culture with layers and layers of bureaucracy. No, but to become more agile, but take some of the best practices of corporate. If that mentality is taken to the older generation, the first generation of businessmen, that will help, because you have to let go. A classic example, 500 crore company, I asked the owner, hey, what is your biggest worry? He says, I'm 72 years old and I've been running my business for 35 years. I've seen this business go from scratch. What I worry is that tomorrow, if I pop off, who's going to run my business? That is exactly the word he used, because he has not created the processes, he has not created the structure to make the organization self-sustaining. That is the first part of your question. The second part of it is the connection between academia and industry. What I've seen in Europe, that in textile related colleges, the colleges which are into the areas which is related to those industries, some of those companies, they have collaboration and they set up grants in which new chemicals or new methods or new processes, they are kind of brought in, and they have this regular interaction where they have internship opportunities from the college into the industry to create a stronger bond between what is taught in the colleges and what is actually happening in the market.
So that is a very valid point that you have given out, and something which is very relevantly happening in the Western countries. While we just taken a small stride of making this kind of information more public through SowtexConnect as a medium, and having people coming and talking about it, making the awareness as one of the areas to set in. Once the awareness set in, of course, the anxiety of learn and upskilling becomes a second area where people will like to know as to how the changes are there and how they can adopt it faster. So I'm sure there is a long way for us to go, but with the technology and digitization coming into play, the gap can be covered up much more faster, and that's what the idea is all about. Let me start by taking some questions here from the room. We have some questions. Bhavna, okay, let me just take it from Bhavna first. She said, I'm new to SowtexConnect event. Tell something more about the disruption in the textile industry. Bhavna, I'm sure you would have attended the complete session. If not, there is a lot of area which Mr. Arup has covered up in this particular session. So please refer to our video. We'll be posting the recorded video. It's on YouTube. It's on live also. So you can refer to the entire video. And if there are some more questions that you have, then probably we can take it up on one-to-one basis. We can refer it to Mr. Arup also for that. Mr. Gaurav Goyal, he has put up a question: how do we add new customers in the international market for the B2B business? Arupji, your thought about this?
Yes. So lead generation, I think that is probably Gagan's expertise of getting leads and converting those leads into, it's a funnel. So you get leads from different sources, but how do you bring the funnel into convert those leads into a real customer? So Gagan, probably you are in a better position to talk about that.
All right, I would actually say that this is in fact going to be one of the topics for an extensive topic where we are specifically taking a session on export growth and marketing within the international space, and we have a full 40-minute session specifically on lead generation, Gaurav. So I would recommend, and this is being taken by Sandeep, who's an export growth coach, and for that. Your thought process on international marketing and B2B lead generation is going to be definitely very, very it can be used there. Having said this, you will have to use a lot of methods for lead generation. Now, of course, being here present at Sotex is one of the topmost lead generation tools for you, for that matter. I would say, why go beyond Sotex to think about a lead generation tool? But apart from that, also, Arup, you were also in your presentation talking about various methods which you actually use. And I would say, whether you talk about social media marketing or you were talking about email marketing, they're all prospecting tools. And each, if done effectively, they lead to getting you critical leads from the people who show interest in you. A lot of times you're reaching out to prospects, isn't it? And yeah, go ahead.
It is the process. I have seen that people go to, for example, they go to a trade show and they spend 3-4 lakhs rupees in going to a trade show in London or to Paris, and they come back with a bunch of name cards. The name card is kept somewhere and there is no follow-up.
Yeah.
But the process, that every interaction which is done by any level in the company is actually captured and followed up. That discipline, if you do not have it, then you will actually let go of many opportunities which you could have actually materialized and converted it to a sales. So it is the process. It's the process. There's no magic into this. It's the process.
And I think, Arup, while this is a process, but I believe, and I've seen quite a lot of businesses, it actually takes a bit of a time to learn to get this into the full process, because as you rightly said, a lot of people start and they are just at the base level of that whole strategy. While if you really need to convert it into active sales, you need to get to the second level and the third level as well, and which is a very, very critical part. And that is where, even though you are hiring other agencies to bring that market effectiveness or to bring that whole intelligence so that you can grow forward, at your level, at a business owner's level, you need a bit of an expertise, you bit of a learning, you bit of an experience, what needs to be done, what are the right steps which you are taking, and also a know-how whether any agency who's coming on board to do this, what are they doing and how to read through the numbers so that you get those conversions, for that matter. Otherwise, anybody can take you for a ride if you not know much about it.
I'll give you a real life example. When I was running Europe, then one of my tasks was to break into the Russian market. Now I had no clue about Russia excepting drinking vodka. Okay, so to break into the Russian market, we had to understand the little leads which are coming. So to convert those leads into a real business, that was a process in itself. But then we managed. It took time. It took about a year and a half to actually get into it. But we were able to get the process up and running to the point where we were able to establish an operation in Russia, in St. Petersburg. So it works. So even if the market is unknown to you, any market in the world, Eastern Europe or Brazil or South America, it can be cracked.
Absolutely. So Gaurav, I hope to some extent we've been able to answer your questions.
Just to add up to what Arup has just said, and it goes back to the same slide which is just shared about a while back, where he said there is a social media strategy and there is a digital marketing and there's a digital strategy altogether. Where if we look as as a B2B marketplace, we understand that in a marketplace you have funnels wherein there are buyers, manufacturers, materials, mills, everybody coming together and putting up their inquiries. And now the filtration process is such wide and huge that it takes a little time for everyone to play on the AI and see where the data is coming in, where the data is flowing out. So I understand for smaller businesses, it is a challenge because I've gone through this journey myself in my textile journey in my early years. But when you see a digital strategy, it is a lot different. And And one important point, what Mr. Arup has just mentioned out is the, a discipline of how you establish a process on follow-up. Yes, a lot can be done through automation, through emailers and through WhatsApps, but the content needs to be curated and it has to be very, very focused to what your audience is looking out for. Yes, and everybody is learning in this particular stage, and I'm sure once you start building up the process, it may not get fine-tuned in the first day or the first round or the first year. Sometimes it takes a company like, a big company, which he's mentioning about from Europe, if it took about a year. So I'm sure with the smaller companies, it becomes much more faster and agile, because then you are able to tweak the processes much more faster because the landscape is relatively small. So it's a very brilliant thought to come out with. Yes, there is a long way and there's a learning to it. We would be sharing out that session, Gagan, when we have the session on the lead generation with Sandeep coming up?
That's next month coming up. Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, sure. So we'll definitely share out that session. It is very interesting for everyone to learn and build up on this on that area. So we don't have questions on the Q&A side. Let me just check. There were a few in the
some interesting comments. Interesting comments from Tanmay and Ashok Chakravarti in the chat box.
Okay, so let me just take it from the chat box directly. Tanmay has mentioned, hi Sonal, the question is important, but they are failing to adopt because there is a huge gap between the investing into technology and ensuring that the technology is being used. Upskilling is not an answer, because upskilling people who do not have the capacity is of no use. That's right to a certain extent, Tanmay. I agree to that. The process and the structure can only be created if you are clear about the business concepts, and that can be built, and then it can be put in the processes, and the structure are there that will support the concept. I totally agree with you on this particular area. So thanks for sharing that, Tanmay. That's an important one which you've mentioned out. Ashok Chakravarti has mentioned out, educational institution is a good option. Meanwhile, institutions, R&D departments, intellectuals, consultants, business communities have to propose collectively to the government and strongly on pros and cons. Government plays an important role since they are the policy makers finally. To be honest, we have seen that there has been a past where we have seen certain kind of government policies which have not been very, very agile and adaptable to the industry at large. But recently, what we are seeing is, and what the current set of measures that have been taken by the government now, it has all been fast-tracked and put it into processes in a bigger way. And I'm sure with these things coming into being, there are a lot more things which are going to be there in the pipeline. And one important area what government has mentioned out is a $100 billion export growth mark, which is a very, very steep numbers that they have put in over the course of next few years. But we really have to see how to build it up. Yes, of course, I would say digitization and the processes that we've just learned today in today's session are going to be an important area if we are able to adopt to them. And I would ask Arup ji to put in your comments as to what do you think on this particular area of the government policies.
Yes, I mean, the government has clearly said that India has to be a $5 trillion economy by 2025. He has put that vision forward. And the MSMEs who contribute 29% of our GDP and employs about 11 crore of our people is a very important part of it. So the government is making policies, but that is what I was saying, that if as an industry organization, if we say that there are certain things that needs to be done at a policy level, then I think we have to have a clear idea of what exactly we want and make a pitch for that, because it seems the administration is open to getting suggestions from the industry.
True that, Rudy, and I believe that there is, though definitely government is doing its bit to make sure the industry is able to adopt to the newer changes faster. But I would say it is on to the business owners
Yeah, it
as well
starts
as
with us.
the
It starts,
stakeholders.
it starts with us. It starts in this room. It starts just now, thinking about
Yes,
how to innovate and how to scale up the business.
exactly. That's where the goal should start from. The idea should start from. Gagan, do we have any other questions?
No, I think we're well served. The questions, interesting conversations came up from Tanmaya and Ashok, and yes, few questions which came up, but no more questions as of now. And I think we had a wonderful conversation, definitely.
So with this, the members who are there in the room, and we still see there are quite a few of them. If you still have any doubts about today's session, or I wouldn't say doubts, if you have any clarification or insight in terms of what it needs to be done, and I see that as the one circular economy slide which Arup has shared. That is another very important insight as to how we see as the mindset at the bigger frame, and then is the action points which are there at the core of the business model. And once we start looking at to as a complete area of what all things have to be changed at what all parameters and what all degrees, I would say there is a lot to be done both from the industry, the new entrants, the stakeholders, as well as the government policy making, to make sure that it goes in a much more fast track way. So definitely, I would say innovation is there to stay, and that is going to be a driving force for the industry in near future. So I believe anything around this would be an important milestone that we need to cover it up. Arupji, your final comments on this particular session today?
Well, I would finally end by saying that what Steve Jobs says, that let us make a dent in the universe.
Absolutely.
All right. So I think we had a wonderful session on this. To as much as I got to know from initial conversations, the session was even more powerful when I saw the full explanation of what all concepts you spoke, Arup, today. Really, really wonderful. I truly enjoyed it, and certainly for the kind of comments that people are saying, sending, they were totally engaged, and they, I'm sure they also enjoyed it a lot. We've also put in a comment section or a link on the chat box at this point of time or earlier as well. If you like this, please share with us how you like this particular event. Along with that, we've also shared a link where, in case you want to connect with Arup, please fill in that Google form. It's a small Google form, just 5 points. You can fill it, and of course, we will speak with you, and then we will connect you to Arup with the context you want to connect with. So with this, I would like to thank you all. First of all, I would like to thank Arup for sparing time for and planning specifically, one, talking about the innovation at large, and then focusing your conversation to the industry and giving very critical insights about the industry. Thank you so much, Arup, and giving some very critical tips around the business, around marketing, and along with that, sharing and bringing all your experience into this funnel and sharing critical thoughts. Thank you so much, Arup, for this, and thank you again, Sonal, for bringing.
Again, I have somebody has just raised the hand. Mr. Mukesh Suneja has raised the hand. He wants to have a conversation. Can we unmute him for that?
Let me just do that. Yeah, just a second. He doesn't. No, he is unraised. I think he's put it down again. Mukesh, I can allow you to talk. There you go. Let me just see if I can. No. Yeah, I have it. I'm just trying. Okay, Mukesh. Mukesh is one of our top learners, by the way. And Mukesh, I have given you the rights to speak. In case you have a question, you can ask now. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, this is not the question. This is something which I got to know today, that it is very imperative to adopt in today's environment of business, artificial intelligence, IT, social media, and whatever smart tools we can. But the most important thing which you correctly, which the very insightful thing which I come to know is, to have champions who can adopt and implement the required tool in the organization and to monitor by us as an owner, as a stakeholder of the company. This is the sum of everything. I mean, this is truly wonderful, wonderful session.
Thank you. Thank you.
Super, super. All right then. Thank you so much, Mukesh, for keep coming back to the sessions and adding value. Thank you.
Thank you.
And with this, I would now like to. We are almost at the end of the session at 6:40. We didn't know where the 2 hours went. Thank you so much, Arup, for adding such value. So I would like to thank you all for all of you for being here for all this time and engaging. And yes, now is the time to close the session. But before we close, I would like to request Sonal. Sonal, what are the last comments would you like to talk about before we close?
Thank you, Gagan. I mean, I had a thorough, I had a brilliant insight coming out from Arup on this session. There are certain areas which we are very, very closely working on as a business model, as Sotex, as a part of the community. SowtexConnect is just the community learning that we are building it on. And that's where the academics area, which we're trying to bridge up. So I could see and relate the entire conversation around what is coming up and how we're building up the Sotex as a platform. So a lot of takeaways for me personally in this particular session. I'm going to go back and want to watch this video once again for sure. Maybe today night or tomorrow, just to take a recap of what all we learned in today's session. Just before we leave in today's session, Gagan, if you can share the session from tomorrow also. So there is, as Gaurav has also mentioned about the export growth, and tomorrow's session is very important. We can share the details. It is with the buying agents associations. They are hosting that tomorrow's session. So anyone who wants to join in, they can reach out to Team Sotex and we can make sure we can make the arrangement for this.
Yes, this is the event for tomorrow, which we're doing along with, and by the way, tomorrow Sandeep is talking about lead generation, but this is a very exclusive event, which is being done with Buying Agents Association, and it is open to only Sotex community's premium members. So, so my request, and I think Gaurav, you are already, so you will definitely be able to, we will be able to share these details with you, Sonal. I think we can share the details of this event, yes, you will be able to get a lot of insights on lead generation in the international business in this particular event. This is being done by Sandeep Kaushik, export growth consultant from Winning Banka. All right, good. So this is the next event per se, and of course after that we have another exciting event next Thursday, which we'll be announcing tomorrow. There you go.
Sure, thank you so much from this, and thank you so much, Arup, for coming and sharing your wonderful insights with every one of us at the Sotex community. And we would love to have you once more in the session at a later time. For the people who have missed out, who were not able to interact lively, I'm sure there is a lot of takeaways, especially for the community at large. So we would like to invite you once again here. And thank you so much once again. And thank you, Gagan, for hosting the complete session.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone. Looking forward to see you very, very soon on our next SowtexConnect event. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you, Arup. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you, Rick.